Nebraska's defense, they remember what happened last time Michigan came to town.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today.
All right, welcome in. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone with you here on this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. The week of big events in the state of Nebraska is underway. Tuesday night in Omaha, Connor, a record crowd of 17,675 saw a 5-set thriller in volleyball between Nebraska and Creighton. Huskers won in the fifth to improve to 9-0. We'll talk about that more later in the podcast today. But the main event, Saturday at Memorial Stadium, is getting close. Michigan, Nebraska, 2:30 p.m., CBS. Can you feel it? Did you feel the juice building toward this football game when you were around Nebraska fans Tuesday night in Omaha?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I think it was pretty volleyball centric on Tuesday night, but I do sense an excitement within the fan base in general for the game. More probably because the last 2 weeks have been sort of boring. So I know it's great that Nebraska did what they did over the last 2 weeks of football, but you can only do that for so long. You're like, all right, let's actually see what we are. So I think there's that excitement and anticipation for this. I didn't talk to very many Nebraska fans last night. That's
okay.
Yeah.
You have a job to do, and that job does not involve talking to a lot of Nebraska fans.
Yeah.
I was walking around the arena. I had my kids there. I was kind of working. Well, I did. I wrote an article about the record crowd, a short little one to get that news out there. But I was also playing the role of dad last night. I was up in the second section, and I did come across a lot of Nebraska fans, and I heard more often than I think in another week, like last week or the week before. How do you think Saturday is going to go? I heard that a lot. What are you thinking about Saturday? That kind of stuff. I think I get the sense that the anticipation, and I mean, I don't need to go gauge this from talking to people at the grocery store or the arena in downtown Omaha. Clearly, the anticipation is building for Saturday in Lincoln. On Tuesday, we heard from Nebraska coordinators Dana Holgorsen and John Butler and a whole group of players. We have some highlights for you. Want to start with this from the senior safety captain, Marquis Buford. He has endured more ups and downs in his 5 seasons at Nebraska than most who have spent 5 seasons in Lincoln over their careers. Keep in mind, as you listen to this clip, and I'll have a comment after about something specific that I remember from early in Marquis Buford's career, but keep in mind that he played in 2021 when Nebraska lost 32-29 against Michigan. He was part of that tumultuous 2022 season, which involved a coaching change, the transition to Matt Rule, the 45-7 blowout loss against Michigan, and then the slow climb back to where Nebraska is to here on Saturday in a game that a lot of people see as an even fight. So here is Marquis Buford Tuesday on stage in Lincoln.
There's a standard for everything, and friendship doesn't come before the standard. And honestly, once I came with that mindset, it made it a whole lot easier. I'm not really as much worried about, obviously everybody is different. You have to approach guys differently, but for the most part, everybody's tough, thick-skinned people, and they know that I love them and I want the best for them at all times. And I just want to bring the best out of them if they're not performing at that. So I feel like just the relationship I have to have with my teammates so that I can be able to hold them accountable. And then for myself, I always have to make sure that I'm practicing what I'm preaching.
Sounds like a mature guy. What do you take away from that?
Well, I think it's a tough thing to do, to be locked in all the time. But I do think, Nebraska has some guys where especially, in the leadership part of the team, where the message from Matt Rule has really resonated. You started to see that like really, really quickly in Matt Rule's career, but every coach everywhere knows this. They're like, once the players really receive that message and they start preaching that message and they live that message, especially in the leadership category every day, then you have a player-led team, and then you have the ability to to stay tough in these moments that aren't always going to be easy for you. Like anyone could go out and win a game with no resistance, but everyone knows there's going to be resistance. So I think that tells you that Nebraska is in a better position from a mental standpoint. Nebraska, they have to do it first, but I think all signs point to them being in a lot better of a situation from a headspace area when you get into these late game. I mean, you think about the game in 2021, Nebraska, doesn't get the fourth down and fumbles, and so whether you like it or not, that's sort of a trend over the last decade or so. Maybe, just maybe, if Nebraska finds himself in a situation like that on Saturday, they'll actually come through like they did in the first game.
Hey, they've won their last 2 one-score games.
Right.
So, all right, I think sometimes when we hear these players talk, and they throw like 8 of them at us in the media on the same day yesterday, and the words can get monotonous and your eyes can kind of glaze over, especially in a week like this where the players are trying really hard to say the right thing. And I think it's the way they feel. I don't think it's forced for them to say what, quote, the right thing, like what they deem as the right thing. We'll talk more about that in the third segment today. But sometimes like just a little clip stands out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that kind of coach speak coming from a player. It doesn't have to be a cliche. And when Buford says friendship doesn't come before the standard, like that really hits me, because it sounds like something that he's thought about. It sounds like something that he can put into practice every day at practice. So if he's out there and one of his guys is not upholding the standard in practice, he doesn't have any issue going and holding that player accountable and calling that guy out. I do not think that across the board that attitude has existed within Nebraska football until maybe right now at this moment. In spots last year, were there players who did that? Yes. And you might find that on every team. But I think across the board right now, because of the strength and leadership that Nebraska has with guys like Buford, that is a team-wide attitude. I think back, and this is unfair to Marquis, but sometimes these moments where they say one little thing, like what he said on Tuesday, sometimes these little moments from their careers stand out above other things, above other moments. And I remember the game when he was a redshirt freshman in 2022 in Ireland. And after the game, it was a disaster the way that second half went. And they had just traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, spent all offseason getting ready to play well in this season opener, starting the year in a Big Ten game with your coach on the hot seat, and they lose it like that. And Buford came out of the locker room, and a bunch of us in the media talked to him, and he said something to the effect of, "We didn't play very well today, and we still almost won. That makes us feel real good about how it's going to go the rest of the way." And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like that is just not the right answer. And it's not his fault. It's the fault of the people who were leaders in the program and didn't put the standard above friendship. So whether or not that thought crossed anyone's mind yesterday when he said that, I'm sure it didn't. But for me, that's what it was. because not just the growth that he's made in 4 years to be able to say the right things and, more important, do the right things, but I think the whole team has come along that far with him. The program has come along that far.
Yeah, I to put it in general terms, I think Frost's thing was like, hey, if we stay on course, then eventually we're gonna break through, right? With the odds are in our favor that way. And Rules is a little bit more like, we're gonna take matters into our own hands here. Like we're gonna be in these 1-score games, but we can affect the outcomes of them. It's not just like we toss the ball into the air and see where it lands every time. So I think there is a pretty key noticeable difference in between those two. Whether it actually results in wins, I mean, we're about to find out. This is an important year as it pertains to that. But I definitely like the mindset better, but that's for sure. And by that time, like you said, Mitch, by that time they were broken. It was, the coach was,
they didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
He was a young guy,
yeah.
and you get into a situation where you're getting asked questions and it just ends up coming out all wrong. I mean, that was the Northwestern team that didn't win another game that year. No, it was not an indication that things were going right in the program because Nebraska played them close in Ireland. It was not at all. It was an indication that things were about to go very, very badly, and they did 2 weeks later. Well, They did all season, but in particular, the low point was 2 weeks later.
When we come back, let's hear from John Butler talking about why he has the number 1 pass defense in the country right now after this.
Right now, a word from Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Check out Mazda's lineups of vehicles for a fit that will work for you. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. It has more IIHS top safety picks than any other company. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model of vehicle. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. Make everyday drives feel like anything but every day. With smooth handling to intuitive controls, it's easy to enjoy your time behind the wheel of a Mazda. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, and there are a bunch of those crossover SUVs, you will drive with confidence through almost any season. Like the athletes you watch, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
And another word from our friends from DoorDash. It is almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you could win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, this guy delivered when it matters most. Let's break it down. For Nebraska, we're going to give it to Riley Van Poppel this week. He delivered in a big way. He got the strip sack that led to the one-handed fumble recovery by Williams Winery on Saturday against Houston Christian. The pressure was kind of on at that moment. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation. He got through the Houston Christian offensive line. And if you've been watching week after week, his performance was not a fluke, and they hope it's certainly not this coming Saturday. Riley Van Poppel is, you could say, on a streak. And just like he delivered for Nebraska, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season long, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. Nebraska pass defense. Let's go through a couple stats. They have not allowed a touchdown pass this season in 3 games. Oh, but they haven't played any good quarterbacks. Well, Brennan Sorsby has kind of gone on and done some good things throwing the ball. So
yeah, he's a good quarterback.
That's an example that we have there. They have allowed 66 yards per game through the air, averaged out over 3 games, which is number 1 nationally. Very, very good. That averages out to 3 yards per attempt, which is frankly stunning, even through just 3 games, a 50% opponent completion percentage, which is in the top 10 nationally as well. So Nebraska's secondary is pretty good. John Butler was the coach of that secondary a year ago, and it was not that good. Now that's over an entire season, and but if you stretch it out, it was 216 yards per game through the air, 7.4 yards per attempt, and about 64% opponent completion percentage. So let's hear from John Butler on why this stark change has occurred over this offseason with this pass defense.
Hoped, when I got here last year, I know I was a secondary coach last year, but there were different systematically. There was a lot of how they were coached in the past was look at the quarterback, have their eyes in the backfield, see a lot, and that's how they approached it. And it took some time for me to adjust that. And then obviously, as I took over as coordinator, my background in coaching the secondary is to take a very collective and disciplined, eye-disciplined approach. When we're playing man coverage, we're looking at our man. When we're playing match coverage, we're looking at our match. Like, we're not looking at the quarterback. In order to defend the pass, you have to defend the receivers, and the quarterback comes second. So I think that those guys have embraced that. They've had more time on task. That just comes with time being around me, and Coach Addison's doing a good job of coaching it the way I want it coached. So, and then obviously the athlete of the players has continued to improve. I think we've got 3 really good corners, that can match up, that have shown they can match up. We have safeties that can cover. We have linebackers that can cover too. I don't think that can be discounted. The teams have tried to leak running backs out, tight ends out, whether it's Javen Wright or Vincent Shavers or whoever it's been. Like, our matchups have not just been on at corner. We've been doing a pretty good job of matching up with whoever they've been sending out there. So, and that's the key, is making sure. It really comes down to eye discipline and execution within the coverage systems, and then having enough variety in your coverage systems to confuse the quarterback.
Okay, so this is another one of those moments where you're in a press conference, a long press conference, and there's a lot of people talking and droning on and trying not to say a whole lot that's going to get anybody excited. And I maybe had my head down, like looking at my computer. And then John Butler started talking about how he's been able to coach the defense this year the way he wants to coach the defense as opposed to last year. And my eyes kind of looked up like, oh, he's actually saying something right here.
Yeah, because he notoriously doesn't say anything. And he was going into it there. That was really good.
So we definitely hinted at this or talked about this after last season and through the off season. And when we had conversations about Nebraska's defense, I think we mentioned that it was a difficult task for Tony White as the defensive coordinator a year ago for Matt Rule to bring in John Butler in the summer, right before camp, and say, all right, now you remember Nebraska had to make a change before the 2024 season because Evan Cooper had to go right around the 4th of July. And then he had to find a secondary coach. And they found John Butler from the Buffalo Bills, and they brought him in, and Rule said, all right, Tony, here's your secondary coach. And John Butler was like, all right, here's how I do things with the defensive backs. And Butler this is very much like a reenactment that isn't the real words, but Butler's like, Tony White is like, oh, well, I do things this way. And John's like, I do it this way. And so then they had to start the season. This didn't happen in February. This happened in August. Then they had to start the season, and they had to figure that out. And that's why you see, I'm oversimplifying it, that's why Nebraska ranked 109th in the country in passing yardage allowed last year at 216.7 yards per game. They were playing 2 defenses at once. Yeah. And so this is John Butler here talking, this clip that we just heard, about how much better it is when the defensive backs are running a scheme and using a style of play that works with the entire 11-man defense.
Yeah, I don't think that's an inaccurate overview of how it went just over a long period of time. No, I mean, that's how it felt to me last year. I don't know that we can necessarily like put a finger on it and say, oh, this is exactly what it is, but it's interesting to hear him say it out loud. And there's no doubt about it. Look at those 2 guys. I mean, they approach defenses in a different way. It doesn't mean that one is more effective than the other. But as far as it matching what you're trying to do as a whole, like, it has to. It doesn't matter what kind of defense you're playing. like, or what you're attempting to do, your coaches have to be on the same page with the way that they want to teach, and where they want guys to be and how they want them to play, because that's how defense has to work. It doesn't work with all, everyone looks at it, they're like, see ball, get ball. It has to kind of work in symphony a little bit, guys got to be behind, if Nebraska's stunting and twisting up front on defense, then a linebacker's got to be on the other side where they're not. Right. It's the same thing in the defensive secondary as well. Like if you're playing a certain way and it doesn't match up with the rest of what you're doing, then you're going to be in trouble. So, I think Butler has brought quite a lot to the table. He has certainly passed a lot of tests so far early in the season. We'll see how this thing holds up, but the secondary is something that I expect Nebraska to be good at the entire year.
I had about 5 follow-ups that I wanted to ask Butler after going into the press conference without anything that I was pressing on my mind, which is probably my fault. They're playing Michigan this week, but I had about 5 follow-ups for him after he made those comments about eye discipline and how they play receivers. And one of them led him to and I didn't ask all 5, like I'm not monopolizing the press conference, but one of them led to him talking about Addison Williams and just what a good fit Addison Williams has been with Butler this year as his secondary coach. And I think Phil Snow helps that. Like having Phil Snow, I think a big part of the reason that Nebraska has Phil Snow is because of the way that the defense was just a little bit disjointed last year. And I don't think that John Butler or Tony White are hard people to work with. It's just that the change happened so late in the offseason last year. They weren't able to get on the same page.
They had to figure it out. Like John Butler kind of just did. And I think Tony would tell you the same thing.
Tony has said the same thing.
Yeah.
So Butler said that he and Addison Williams are very different in their personalities, and that's something that he thinks works in Nebraska's favor, in the favor of the players in the secondary, because they get one thing from Butler, who has a lot of familiarity with these defensive backs because he coached them last year, and it's a big part of his defense. It's half of his defense almost. And then Addison Williams brings something else entirely. And I was kind of like, well, what's that? Like, how are they different? And I asked Buford about it. And he, all I could get there was their personalities are just different. Like Addison Williams is closer in age to these guys, and he's a little more, this is me interpreting it, he's a little bit more loose. He's a little bit more kind of their bud back there in practice. And then Butler comes in and, hey, he's the guy with the NFL background who's all serious. And, he means business when he's out there teaching.
Well, I think it goes to show you like consistency and continuity within a unit. I mean, it's just so important. You have an idea of a top-down idea of what you want it to be like, and then you have to go get coaches who fit well into that and players who fit well into that, and then you have to do it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, it's not rocket science here. The messaging is just so key when it comes to football, because the mindset is such an important part of the game. So it feels like everybody's on the same page, and we'll see how far that takes them.
Yeah. Okay, coming back, we'll hear from Heinrich Haarberg, who was the quarterback for Nebraska the last time Michigan visited Memorial Stadium.
But first, a word from Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why we have a little thing called Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. It does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of spending, and finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet, much less trying to figure out the formulas for it. Monarch can help you identify that you're not saving as much as you thought. You could discover forgotten accounts from previous places, previous jobs, whatever it might be, or you could increase your savings rates. Check that out. I mean, there is so many options for you. It's just going to streamline your the financial part of your life. So don't let it slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year, 50% off your first year. Once again, 50. You don't get that deal a lot. monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege.
All right. I was a little early there. Sorry. Welcome back. Third segment, final segment, Wednesday episode, Locked On Nebraska. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. 2 more days until we get to see those maize and blue uniforms come out of the tunnel in the north end zone at Memorial Stadium.
I hope they wear maize pants.
Yeah.
Because 2 times ago when they came here. So in 21, they wore all white, and I went down the field. I was like pissed. I was like, what the hell? This is supposed to be, I thought you were Michigan. I thought you did the same thing every game. But at least in 23, they wore the maize pants, which was good.
They'll have their winged helmets. We will not get to see Jim Harbaugh in cleats on the turf at Memorial Stadium. It is sad that Michigan doesn't really have a head coach for this game. So we'll see how that goes. Biff Poggi, of course, the interim who is in charge. All right, we'll get to Heinrich Haarberg in a minute. As I mentioned, the quarterback in that game. And I want to mention something too that just came across my Twitter timeline. No, not breaking news, but a comment that I received as it relates to that 2023 Michigan game. Okay, so quickly here. Go ahead. Did you have something?
No. I'm curious to hear the comment.
Yes. So we were both there last night. Just want to revisit this big event at CHI last night. Great atmosphere. Connor, do not yell at Connor. He was working. And that's what he does. It's awesome.
Okay. It's okay. You could yell. I thought, did
you get yelled at? Connor is the in-arena host for Creighton, a lot of Creighton events, and he was
most of them. So I don't. Yeah, everyone knows that by now. You guys could just deal with it however you could deal with it however you'd like to deal with it. But
he also does Nebraska women's basketball PA.
That is true. That is true. Yeah. So once again, I think it's okay. But like that game is, Nebraska's won every single time. And now 3 of the last 4, they've gone to 5 sets.
Yeah.
But there's always like this, kind of we come together for volleyball, that's, like contrast that with basketball, where when those 2 teams get together, there's some vitriol and there's some jabbing the week before. This one's kind of all about like, let's come together. So, I felt that when we went into the 5th last night, and it was just like, I was glad that we got that. I was really happy that we got that 5th, and it was just like, all right, let's see how this all looks. And it was electric in there.
It was like a boxing match that got to the 12th round.
Yeah, and
everybody in the building was just happy that it made it to the 12th round, and that people were both fighters were still standing, and they all just cheered for each other. Like the Nebraska fans were cheering for Creighton, and the Creighton fans were cheering for Nebraska. Just that they made it that far and put on such a good show. And as Danny Busboom-Kelly, the first-year Nebraska coach, mentioned, like she's kept tabs on this series in the 8 years where she was at Louisville, and then was, of course, a part of it in her time as a player and assistant coach at Nebraska. She said that she remembers the days when Nebraska would come to Omaha and it would be 90% Nebraska fans. Well, last night was not 90% Nebraska fans inside CHI. It was more like 70-30. It was more red than blue for sure, but the Creighton students showed up and they were loud, and it got really loud in the arena. I loved it. It was a charged atmosphere, which was just great for the sport and great for sports in Nebraska.
So I don't know what they're doing. So it said an indoor regular season attendance record.
Well, you have to take into account the 92,000. Otherwise, it was just a regular season record.
Yes, 17,675 last night. So that record. Well, I mean, it's gone through a variety of different things, but it was held by Nebraska-Creighton at CHI a few years ago. Wisconsin and Marquette at Fiserv broke it and held it, and now Creighton and Nebraska again just kind of shattered it. They beat it by 500-600. Wisconsin and Marquette play at Fiserv tonight. I don't know if they are going for a record crowd again, because that building does hold more than CHI.
Okay.
But I haven't
go
heard
down
any,
again.
I haven't heard any buzz about them breaking the record. So it might be like a Melvin Gordon, Samaje Perine, like I only have the rushing record for 1 week situation. I don't know what it's going to look like in Milwaukee tonight.
It's just we'll get back to football in a second. It's just an indicator of the way the sport is growing. The top since Nebraska broke the all-time record, which will never be touched in 92,003, the next 4 largest crowds, and last night was not one of them, they're all postseason crowds, have all happened since then, since August 30th, 2023. So cool. It was a great night for volleyball, and the two teams delivered. Nebraska won at 15-9 in the 5th. I thought Creighton was going to win. When we went to the 5th, I thought Creighton had the momentum. Creighton did have the momentum after winning the 4th, and then the Jays aced Nebraska on the first 2 points of the 5th set. And I was like, all right, this is it. This is going to be Creighton's first ever win over Nebraska.
I do wonder how the dynamic changes for Creighton. Like, the more you lose these 5 setters, the more it's like, damn, we gotta get one of these. You know, I think that was the prevailing thought from the Creighton side last night. Obviously, they generally played well, but when you have a shot at the king, you best not miss, right? Like, and they keep coming up just a little bit short.
Creighton. All right, we keep talking about this, but Creighton is not the team that Nebraska wants to see in December. It'll be like the worst case scenario for Nebraska if Creighton, and this maybe is why it would have almost been better for Nebraska if Creighton won last night, because Creighton desperately needs one of these top 10 wins, and it's played Texas and Penn State and USC and now Nebraska. It desperately needed one of these top 10 wins to go, top 10 matches to go the Jays' way in order to secure first weekend of hosting in December. Otherwise, if you just run through the Big East, they're very possibly going to get sent on the road for both weekends or for the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. And if they get sent to Lincoln, like that is not the opponent at all that Danny Busboom Kelly and the Huskers would want to see at Devaney in the round of 32. So
yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, fun night last night. It was awesome.
Yeah. All right. Back to Lincoln on Tuesday. So all of the conversations with coordinators and players carried kind of a similar tone yesterday. You didn't see anybody sticking out their chest and like talking a big game. So we got, of course, the coordinator, Sierra Wright, Emmett Johnson, Cam Lenhart, you mentioned Buford, Heinrich Haarberg, Henry Lutovsky, and Dylan Raiola. Like a veteran group, leaders, captains, multi-year starters, nobody in their first year in the Nebraska program. No doubt these players were chosen because of who they are, what they've done at Nebraska, and what they would say about Michigan.
Yeah, it's it's kind of interesting. So should we play this Heinrich Haarberg clip before we get out of here?
Yeah. So, well, we did get to, and a lot of these guys were like, my take was like they were confident, but they were not like too confident. It wasn't fake confidence. They talked about Michigan like, all right, yeah, it's a big game. It's because it's in the Big Ten. It's not, and this is a tough league. And I think Nebraska players understand that if they beat Michigan and then lose 2 of the next 3 against Maryland, Minnesota, and Michigan State, not in that order, then they haven't really taken a giant step forward. So Saturday is just like the beginning. It's a part of their quest, and that's the vibe I got from them.
They want to do the nameless, faceless opponent thing, but
which it doesn't need to go that far. Like that's kind of dumb. Like Michigan has a name and a face. It's fine. You just don't have to make it out to be the game of the century.
It doesn't change the preparation, and you hopefully it doesn't change. But like Matt Rule's gonna let a sweet pregame speech fly and talk about how they don't respect us or something like that, and they're gonna get good and ready to go. And you can only fire that bullet a couple times a year. So like there is a little bit of both going on here. They know what's at stake, but also they are confident enough to come from a place where it's like, yeah, this doesn't need to be our one shining moment. We could be a good team all year long.
It better not be your one shining moment, or you're going to be right back in the place where you're at like 7 wins at the end of the season. Okay, here is Heinrich Haarberg, the quarterback in 2023, who now plays tight end for Nebraska.
Through this week, absolutely. That game not go the way I wanted, not go the way any of us wanted. It just got out of hand really fast, and we did not respond the way we wanted to. I don't think that we put our best foot forward that day. And, you know, I've been thinking about it for the last couple of days, just how that week went and what are some different things that, you know, while I'm playing a different position now, there's still aspects of that preparation that go into it that you have to be ready. You know, if something does go wrong, you know, if I mess up at the tight end position, it's, you know, not a pick or something or a fumble. It could be a fumble, but, you know, if I miss a block, how do you move forward from that in a game like this where, you know, they don't care if I just messed up. They're going to bring the same intensity every single play.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Heinrich.
Heinrich, right. He feels the pain from 2023, probably more than a lot of players in the program. Nebraska came as close in that loss, 45-7, to getting shut out as it has at any moment since the last time Nebraska was shut out, 19-0 in 1996 against Arizona State. Joshua Fleeks had the 74-yard run in the final minutes to prevent them. It looked like a Michigan shutout. It had all the signatures of that. And that, of course, was a national championship team. So the comment that I received, so I had a tweet about that Heinrich Haarberg quote yesterday, that video clip, and Doug on Twitter replied to me, said, might want to mention Michigan knew Nebraska's plays. So that's one thing we haven't heard about here in the lead up to Michigan is that Michigan cheated the last time that Nebraska and the Wolverines locked horns.
Let me say this. To be fair, everyone knew Nebraska's plays that year because Nebraska was going to run the ball every single time. So
yeah, Haarberg left, Haarberg right, short pass. He threw for 199 yards in that game, and it still didn't matter.
Right. So, yes,
Michigan didn't win because it knew Nebraska's plays in that game.
Yeah, they won because they were better. But fair, you know, they definitely cheated, and those barbs will be thrown the rest of the week and the rest of the season, really the rest of eternity for Michigan. So
that's why Sharon Moore will be in Ann Arbor, Michigan on Saturday instead of Lincoln, Nebraska as his team plays.
Yep. All right, that's it for us today. Come back tomorrow. We will be one day closer to the Michigan game. It's a big moment for us, and it's a big moment for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate weekly college football preview. Drake Toll, Gary Patterson, Jesse Hawley, Locked On's local experts. They have you covered. It's Thursdays throughout the season, and it's only on Fire TV.